Hey, welcome to Tea with Davina. Today we're talking about the Isaac Hayes song, Hold On, I'm Coming. Federal judge has issued an injunction forbidding the Trump campaign from using this song. We're going to talk about Jimmy McCain because he is the son of John McCain, former senator, Republican senator for Arizona, and he has said, I am not endorsing President Trump. I, in fact, am changing my voter registration to Democrat and voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as the ticket for president and vice president of the United States. A patriotic decision, a safe decision. Thank you. And it's helped make Arizona, I know, more in play for Kamala Harris. It's so important given the context of the electoral college system that these states that can be swing states, battleground states, etc., where a small portion of voters can override the will of the majority of voters. Now, I support democracy, which employs the wisdom of crowds to bring about a just decision for a society overall. But the electoral college system was written in as a perversion of that principle of democracy. Maybe not obviously to some people, because it doesn't put the most visible thumb on the scale, but when there are large disparities between the results from the popular vote and the electoral college outcome, you can see that thumb more clearly. And in the case of Trump's victory in 2016 and even in Biden's victory in 2020, where you could see that Biden could still have won the popular vote by close to 8 million votes. And if some more marginal victories in certain states had not existed, if Trump had got his way trying to bully the Georgia Secretary of State and some other Secretary of States to just give him or find him 11,780 votes as he requested, that he could have then claimed to have won the electoral college vote. I mean, fortunately, it is a big ask when you call up a Secretary of State and say, find me 11,000 votes. Trump thought it was just, but that is actually a pretty big, pretty criminal thing to ask somebody. So I'm just going to put something up on screen. And there's John McCain's son, Jimmy McCain, who is a US soldier and now is a registered Democrat and is voting for Kamala Harris. I think the last straw for him was reportedly seeing what Donald Trump did at Arlington Cemetery, that he called it a violation that turned the cemetery into a campaign backdrop. And in response to that, he's voting for Kamala Harris. I guess it's given him the clarity to see that Donald Trump is not someone who does anything in the interests of the country. He is someone who is all about manipulating appearances in order to serve his own pockets and his own power and influence chances. So that's something good. I can bring up the article so we can have a look at that. If you follow me, you'll know. And yes, we can't get rid of the Electoral College in time for this election, but we know at least the Harris campaign, the Harris-Walz campaign is on top of it and is looking to capitalize on the enthusiasm and the appreciation for the Biden-Harris administration that exists in the minds of people who have actually followed the investments and the improvements and the guiding and public serving hand that has helped steer America through the most recent crises that have bedeviled the world into making the United States a leading economy during this era where inflation is a problem for all modern industrialized countries around the world that rely on international travel, that rely on supply chains between countries being smooth. And of course, Trump's pal Putin is someone who imperiled those dynamics, who through trade and who through transport threw a lot of spanners into the works by invading Ukraine. A brutal, murderous and unnecessary bit of imperialism there. Thanks, or rather no thanks to Trump for emboldening a despot, and in fact emboldening and praising despots all around the world. He not only has been exposed by his former chief of staff, John Kelly, as praising Hitler and saying there were many things he admired about him. He's openly expressed admiration for Putin, for President Xi of China, saying he's very strong, for crazy despot Kim Jong-un, saying he's very strong and his people love him. Yeah. So Jeff says hi, and I did that already. So what have I brought up on screen? Yes, I'm going to bring up the CNN article so we can have a little look at John McCain's son, Jimmy McCain. All right. So John McCain's son decries Trump appearance at Arlington as a violation that turned cemetery into a campaign backdrop. He's going to be interviewed at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday. Hey, that's today. That's going to be something. He said he viewed it as a violation, blah, blah. He'd already been moving away from the Republican Party, and just weeks ago, he changed his voter registration to Democrat. And that's Trump. I don't think that's Trump in Section 60. Trump and his campaign team fabricated a ceremony to pretend that it was an official event that then Harris Waltz declined to attend. But there was no official event designated to commemorate the third anniversary of Abbey Gate, the suicide bombing at the airport in Kabul, which affected the US withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, and 13 troops lost their lives and more American service members were injured. And very few people in the media will mention that Donald Trump was the person who negotiated with the Taliban at Camp David, willfully excluding the Afghanistani government, the fledgling government that the US had spent billions of dollars in money and inadvertently many lives in helping to support that government in competition to defeat the Taliban. So Trump negotiated with the Taliban on 9/11 at Camp David, and obviously an anniversary of 9/11, and signed a deal saying that 5,000 Talibani soldiers and fighters were to be released by the Afghan government in exchange for Trump winding down the US presence in Afghanistan with eyes to a withdrawal entirely. So he had depleted the number of troops to weaken the US position and make it more difficult for Biden to withdraw in a safe way. So Trump deliberately weakened the safety conditions for US service members, put them in danger in order to create a political landmine for his successor. So here we go. Quotes from McCain. He said he's speaking out now for the first time about Trump because of the former president's conduct at the hallowed ground where several generations of McCain's family, including his grandfather and great-grandfather, are buried. It just blows me away, McCain, who was served in the military for 17 years, told CNN. And I'm just going to pull back for a second to contrast this with Trump bone spur Donald, who used college as a reason for deferment initially, and then got a family friend, a doctor who paid rent to his father, Fred Trump, to certify that he had bone spurs that would preclude him from fighting in the war. And of course, bone spurs has never come up since. And if you watch videos of Trump mentioning that, he sounds so weak. And of course, the kind of weak people who think Donald Trump is strong are the kind of weak people who've centered their identity around the need to fabricate a racial superiority for themselves, and who are therefore rendered uneasy and concerned by the ongoing evolution of the US into a flourishing pluralistic democracy. And they would prefer to keep the electoral college system, to keep the filibuster, to keep a bigger white dominance thumb on the scales of justice and policy making in the United States, because they just sense on some level that maybe there are some privileges there that they're not willing to give up. And they are encouraged in their fear and anger and resentment by exploitative grifters like Donald Trump and others in the Republican Party. So it's good that more people are seeing that hood lifted off, and that the Republican Party agenda of achieve policy outcomes for wealthy lobbyists at the expense of working and middle class Americans, and do so by crafting emotional appeals to people who fear loss of cultural dominance. There you go. I might say cultural dominance because it's annoying to have to say white dominance all the time. I don't want to uphold their delusional claims to superiority, so I don't want to put the word white in my mouth over and over again as if it's anything other than a construct to make some people feel good about their immoral exploitation of other people. And I don't feel bad about being white, but I do feel like there's some ownership that white people need to take of some constructs that have been created in the name of upholding whiteness at the expense of minority groups in the United States and elsewhere. Okay, maybe I'll read a little bit more from this one. All right, let's see. McCain's, okay. I just think, said McCain, that for anyone who's done a lot of time in their uniform, they just understand it that inherently that it's not about you there. It's about these people who gave the ultimate sacrifice in the name of their country. McCain's decision to speak out now is part of his broader shift away from the Republican Party and his family's famously conservative roots. After years as a registered independent, he said he registered as a Democrat several weeks ago and plans to vote for Kamala Harris in November, adding that he would get involved in any way I could to help her campaign. It's a significant move for the son of a former GOP presidential candidate and Arizona senator. While other members of the McCain family have distanced themselves from Trump, including John McCain's mother, Cindy, who endorsed then-candidate Joe Biden in 2020, and his sister, Megan, none except Jimmy have publicly abandoned the Republican Party. Hi, Pumpkin. All right. And there's John McCain, Megan McCain, and Jimmy McCain. It's a photo from 2013 because, of course, John McCain did die subsequent to a brain tumor. All right, well, I'm going to go, but thanks for listening. Thanks for taking the time to spend with me, and thanks to any repeat viewers. I will talk to you again soon. Oh, and one last thing. Actually, I was going to say the word collateral damage because it is true that Louisiana, the government, was it a judge? Let's check it out because there are experts on Twitter who have covered these things, and I can just report on their findings. Oh yeah, and a former Republican senator from the critical battleground state of Pennsylvania. I misspoke and said battleground state of Pennsylvania. Pat Toomey has announced he will not endorse or vote for Donald Trump. So that is big because Pennsylvania is going to be a really critical state this election, and we're operating within that grounds. There's the Isaac Hayes account, Isaac Hayes III. Today, our family was granted an injunction against Donald Trump from playing Isaac Hayes music ever again. We are pleased with the decision by the court and move to the next phase of this lawsuit. Excellent. Let's hear what they say.
No, it's after that license has been terminated by BMI, there's any opportunity to return to use the song. And that was told to him over 100 days ago, and he continued to use the song. So there's no coming back from using the song.
But I'll get off and I'll hang out with you.
Respond to the suggestion in court today that this is all politically motivated on your part.
That's totally not politically motivated.
I've been doing these cases for almost 30 years. We've gotten probably 250 plus artists out of bad contracts in situations like this. This is what we do. I saw him post something on August 3rd, and I called him from Chicago and said, do you want us to handle this? And he said, please step in. So from August 3rd to September 3rd, he has shut Donald Trump down. He and the team of lawyers, Ava, Liz Dartison, back here quietly, our copyright administrator, Gina, Ryan, there's a whole team.
That's really great. So good work for their team. Video from JD Vance being the keynote speaker at a 2017 Heritage Foundation launch for their Index of Culture and Opportunity. In a collection of 29 essays, authors argued that IVF was harmful to women, that hunger was a great motivation for Americans to find work, and that abortion should become unthinkable. Yeah, of course, JD Vance thinks it's so worthwhile.
To the poor. They do an incredible disservice to the idea of opportunity. I think those on the left do an incredible disservice to the poor. They do an incredible disservice to the idea of opportunities. Aren't blameworthy individuals, that very often they're kids who had disadvantage, but they had disadvantage in a context that we're not comfortable talking about. They had cultural disadvantage. We've got to be willing to have that conversation. We've got to be willing to measure it. And that's why I think what the Heritage Foundation is doing with this index is so important and so worthwhile. And I hope that it's the beginning of a conversation about culture and opportunity, not the end of it.
Yeah, well, they're understanding
opportunity when they fail to acknowledge that these cultural factors matter and that they influence.
Cultural factors, a nice way of saying governments shouldn't help people get back on their feet, and shouldn't provide safety nets, shouldn't be of service to the citizens of the nation in which they reside. It's pretty ugly if you look at it close up. I know some people embrace it, people who've read Ayn Rand. Look, Ayn Rand died being dependent on social security benefits and other benefits from the government. It's not exactly a principle people live by. It's just a performance principle that people like to say to rationalize cruelty and injustice, because the poor are exploited in a way that is very unjust. It's very easy to make money off poor people because the greater the factor of desperation, the greater the ability to extort disproportionately profitable fees and charges. And I mean, you can imagine, I've used this example a few times today, renting people a fridge because they can't afford the capital outlay to buy a fridge outright. And then over time, they will have paid far more for that fridge than somebody who was able to purchase the fridge outright. Ninny's like JD Vance, and ninny I know is too kind a word, but I can't think of anything right now to disparage him that wouldn't be vulgar. JD Vance will say hunger's a great motivator, that, you know, it's okay to exploit, to overcharge people who are poor. My neighbor said that, something about he opposed raising the minimum wage because those people should change their lives. And the thing about poverty is it's a very trap in place kind of condition. And there are so many things that governments are able to do to lift their citizens around the world, and Americans should get to enjoy those advantages of good governance as well. All right. All right, I have to go hang with my son, but I just did want to tell people about the misoprostol. Okay, so a reminder. All right, let's have a look. I think this is Louisiana. Let's check. So life-saving medication for postpartum hemorrhaging being uncontrollable bleeding, is being pulled off emergency carts because of new Louisiana law reclassifying misoprostol as a controlled dangerous substance. So big picture, this is women's lives becoming collateral damage for a Republican policy to privilege fetal lives as having legal personhood over women whose lives can legitimately be endangered through pregnancy, because pregnancy is inherently fraught with danger and fraught with the ability to become a life-changing circumstance, fraught with the ability to end a woman's future fertility or future hopes of having children as well, and requires doctors unencumbered by legal impositions from a party that is often captive to religious fanatics who do view women's lives as collateral damage in pursuit of praising their own moral high ground, their own fabricated moral high ground. So 50 doctors signed a letter to the Louisiana Department of Health and Surgeon General, Ralph Abraham, asking for additional guidance, specifically how to ensure misoprostol will be readily and quickly available in commonly used obstetric hemorrhage carts. So these are carts equipped with all the medicine that you might use in stabilizing medical care for a woman who's uncontrollably hemorrhaging. It happens all the time. It's a naturalistic fallacy to pretend that childbirth is a natural, beautiful thing that's inherently safe for women. It's not. It's inherently dangerous. It's a dangerous activity, and modern medicine can make it less dangerous. Unfortunately, in America, it has the highest rate of maternal death in the entire world because of the element of religious fanaticism that has captured Republican loyalties in many instances, and the minds of Republican voters, and just people who are willing to throw away and say it's a small number, it doesn't matter, the health and safety and well-being of women and girls, because girls can become pregnant as well. And it's extra dangerous. Pregnancy is additionally dangerous for women who haven't, for girls who haven't fully developed and whose pelvises are still relatively small, and who can have, whose children are more likely to have chromosomal disorders and have complications during labor and pregnancy. So we're trying to fix something that is not broken and is absolutely safe, said Dr. Stacey Holman, calling the law an unnecessary barrier. One OB-GYN I spoke with said it's been preemptively pulled off some postpartum carts already, and that there's confusion and angst amongst doctors worried about how this will affect inpatient care. Do you want your doctor worried about how they can deliver life-saving care to you? No, this is not an issue that impacts men, so women have to be more vocal in demanding to not be second-class citizens and not be collateral damage in the pursuit of some holier-than-thou posturing at the expense of women's lives. A rural physician I spoke with hadn't even heard misoprostol was being reclassified. What? That's death, she said, when I told her about the cart removal. She said pharmacies have already been pushing back when she prescribed the medication for miscarriages. Take it off the carts, that's death. That's a matter of life or death. The physician said that if a pregnant patient came into a hospital bleeding out with no IV access, she would automatically use misoprostol as an option. Other medications and tools are not as easily available in rural hospitals because they require more resources, whether that's because they are more expensive or require the use of syringes. Not to mention, the more time a patient has to wait for access to medicine, the more blood she uses. So women in rural hospitals have to look forward to the greater danger that their lives will be placed in as a consequence of this posturing. Ironically, it is rural conservative votes that are given undue influence via the electoral college system that has put Republicans often in positions of greater power or emboldened Republicans to push for these roles. But at a state level, it's more often gerrymandering that has gerrymandering and democratic discouragement, feeling that if you vote for a president like Barack Obama, you've achieved a cultural win, and you have, but a cultural win at the federal level is not enough. Democratic voters need to be enthused and joyful and get off the sofa to vote, not just for a president, but in their state elections for everybody, and to know who are the lobbyists in this situation, the lobbyists for death and disabling medical outcomes for women. If you don't want to be collateral damage or your relatives to be collateral damage, do take a look at these type of outcomes occurring in Republican states, with the likelihood, if Donald Trump, touch wood, prays to any deities that you recommend, that he not be elected. But were he to be elected, Donald Trump would be very likely to pander to the religious coalition that has helped build support for him, namely those evangelicals and those extremists who do not value the lives and the care of women. Pregnancy is not a walk in the park. More than 200 doctors signed a letter begging lawmakers to reconsider. And by the time the bill got to state Senate, it had national attention, with VP Kamala Harris weighing in. But there you go. So they've passed the bill. It's reported on in the Rolling Stone, criminalizing life-saving pregnancy care pills. Yep. So people that want to pretend pregnancy is sunshine and roses, we need to do a pregnancy monologue, where a series of pregnancy monologues where people who've experienced it can help shatter that or can help pull aside that shroud that often lies over pregnancy, that optimistic shroud that says, nothing to look at here, it's all sunshine and roses. It's not, it's life endangering, it can be painful. We endure it because we want the outcome of children and our ability to generate life and create families, which we don't do by ourselves, obviously. We do with the addition of biological material from a man, if it be a romantic partner or even if it be through IVF and through sperm donation. It's still women's bodies that gestate fetuses into babies, into human life, and our lives that can be imperiled as a consequence, and that should have greater legal standing over the lives of potential humans. I'm happy to call a fetus an unborn baby. I don't mind. I don't need to mess with that. I've been to baby showers. They're not fetus showers. I've celebrated people having a baby. There's a lot of preparation and work that women do in order to prepare their lives for the future entrance of a human baby once it's born. And there's a lot of things we do while we're taking care of an unborn baby and monitor our diet and avoid certain risks and hold off from eating our favorite types of cheeses like blue cheese or soft cheeses like brie or camembert. I made plenty of sacrifices and avoided eating sashimi for 9 months. It was a long time. I know that I did that because I anticipated a baby coming into this world, and he wasn't just a clump of cells, and my daughter wasn't just a clump of cells. They were future life, and I invested a lot of emotion and care into that. That doesn't mean I think I shouldn't have had the legal right and the legal protection of being able to pursue stabilizing medical care if that's what I needed, because I could have had another child. If I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I would have wanted to continue to gamble to maximize the chances of my life. And I'm perfectly happy for some fundamentalist religious person to sacrifice their own chances of survival by foregoing chemotherapy for their treatment. That's fine if that's their choice. But to have a state level or a federal level imposition on women to not be able to choose medical care and to not have doctors be free to choose stabilizing required medical care or drugs such as misoprostol to help stop uncontrolled obstetric bleeding, it's not okay. So you'll hear from more women in the coming days and weeks, I'm sure. My pregnancy monologue is this. Actually, I'll write it. I'll practice it. I'll write it. I'll come back with it as a short video because I want to kick off other people doing the same thing, and they may or may not, but I'll still put my efforts out there to say, remove that illusion that our lives are never threatened. Our lives are threatened. We not only make a big effort, but we know that bleeding happens to people, that there are women who have miscarried tragically in the bathroom of their own homes. There are Black women who have had their bathrooms literally destroyed by police officers looking for a fetus in their toilet in order to charge them with abuse of a corpse because of being reported by a nurse in a hospital, because of laws passed about abortion being illegal. So a woman undergoing a miscarriage becomes a suspect in a felony case. We are all suspects, potential suspects, murder suspects, when anti-abortion laws are passed, because natural spontaneous abortions happen every day to women, and some are tragedies, some endanger the lives of women, some involve incomplete miscarriages that involve hemorrhaging that require medical care and treatment. And when a miscarriage becomes a potential manslaughter or murder case, then our care, then doctors caring enough to help stabilize our condition instead of having to worry about reporting us to police, becomes a problem. So that's all for me from now. I'm going to go actually hang out with my child, who I love very much. Thank you and take care.